Today's video is all about this. Not the Ferrari, but Outrun.
Get ready.
So hello YouTube, Outrun. Let's talk about Sega's Outrun. So Sega's Outrun is a game that didn't feature in my top 10 video game series of all time. It was an honourable mention and I didn't actually put it in the top 10 purely for the fact I didn't feel there was enough games to warrant a series. Had there been 5 or 6 games then maybe so. But anyway, so I thought what we'd do, we'll talk about, really and truly, this video's been born out of a couple of things. Nostalgia. Also there's the Stig, Ben Collins has done a lap time I think, or he's done his quick time on Sega's Outrun and visited a guy that's got the world record, and it got me thinking about Sega's Outrun because it's actually been, there's a couple of things there. One is the fact that I am mad about cars, or have been in the past. Cars have taken a bit of a backward seat and I'm more into video games. But I've always loved cars from a young age, and it started with Matchbox and Corgi cars. People, I'm in my mid-40s, and I loved cars. Grandparents take me down to Woolworths, and I get a Matchbox car or a Corgi car, and I was obsessed with cars. And remember seeing cars in the 80s growing up, and yeah. And that video, the intro that you saw to this video was luckily I was at a classic car show and saw this Ferrari Testarossa in the corner, and I thought I'd get some snapshots because I knew I was wanting to make this video. And it seems to be a common theme my videos at the moment on collections. Last Friday I put out a Shinobi video, so go and check that out if you've not already seen that. And then a couple of weeks ago I did my homage to Street Fighter 2 collection. So my first recollection of sort of a car simulator, really, when I was a kid growing up, was do you remember, those who are old enough to remember the Tomy racing simulator that I'll put a picture up here of it. That was my very first, and I'd never had one of those. Again, they're very collectible now. But I think a friend of mine down in my street had one. I'm sure that was the case. And I remember that, where you steered it, and it was, yeah. That was my first recollection, and that's really what the video is about, is the fact that I feel that Outrun, if we didn't have Outrun, we wouldn't have the simulators we would have today in terms of Gran Turismo and Forza, and you know, it's, for me, it's thanks to that we've got these games today. So yeah, funny enough, I had a Sinclair Spectrum in the mid-80s, and I played car games and they just weren't very good. I remember one called, was it Hard Driven? By Dumark, I think it was called, but they were the developers, and it was just rubbish. It was awful, and obviously it was on the Spectrum, so it wasn't particularly very good. There may have been a port on a an Amiga version of it. But yeah, there was nothing about until I remember playing Outrun for the first time in about 89, 1990, around that era. And I was, like I say, I was obsessed with cars. For those of, again, similar age to me, it wasn't just about Matchbox and Corgi, but you've got to remember the 80s was full of cars. It was Dukes of Hazzard, Knight Rider, cars, car chases in the A-Team, The Bullet, Steve McQueen, watching that. Obviously that was an 80s, it's an old film, but I remember watching it, you know, and things like that really that spurred me on to love cars. I remember, you know, for some reason, I can't remember what I did yesterday, but I can still remember the Scalextric adverts.
Out of the pit stop, it'll blow your mind. There's more to Scalextric when it's racing time. There's cars with brake lights, chicanes that flash. This humpback bridge is wild, change on the track. Scalextric, 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 Scalextric's the winner. Yes!
You know that they were brilliant. They were great, and I've still got my Scalextric set up in the loft somewhere. With the two Sierra Cosworths, the Texaco and the other one, whatever it is, black and red cars. But yes, I was mad on cars. I loved cars, and I also remember the game you got, Top Trumps, where you could look at different cars and statistics, and it was a fascinating time. But then I wanted to combine that with video games, and it wasn't until I got to Outrun that I was managing to be able to do that. And I remember going into this arcade and it was a stand-up. I think the first time I played Outrun was on a stand-up with a shaky steering wheel, going around into the dirt and feeling that sort of judder, and it was amazing. You know, you think this is the late 80s. Yeah, Outrun, fantastic game. I just want to talk you briefly through my collection of Outrun video games. So we'll start off with the Mega Drive, which was pretty good to the arcade. I think it wasn't bad at all. You may argue that the PC Engine is probably the better port, and I'd probably agree with you on that. But as a 16-bit console home, I think this Mega Drive version does it brilliantly. And also, we need to talk about the fact that not only is it a fantastic game, but the soundtrack goes with it. You know, it is iconic. It's an iconic game, but it's also an iconic soundtrack. So for me, you know, that's why I did it at the start with me turning my radio on, because that's an iconic start to the game. And obviously we've got to talk about the box art. You know, we've got the Testarossa there, we've got the Porsche 911, and weirdly enough, we've got Volkswagen Beetle. So yeah, not sure why they did that there. They should have put a Countach or Countach at Lamborghini or something like that. Would have been probably better, but fantastic. Yeah, great game. And then obviously you had Turbo Outrun with the Ferrari F40, wasn't it, I think? And again, you know, I was obsessed with those cars. Late 80s, it was the Ferrari F40 and the Porsche 959. They were the sort of cars that I grew up with. And then I've got Outrun, as you saw in the video. I've got Outrun for the Game Gear. I've had this copy for about 26 years. I was quite ill and was in hospital for a long time back then, and I wanted to sort of get my Game Gear out because it was portable. You've got to remember, back then the internet was not particularly very good in hospitals and mobile phones were rubbish, so I wanted to get back into a bit of handheld gaming, and luckily I managed to get myself Outrun fairly cheaply. But yeah, fantastic port. So yeah, that's Outrun. Like I say, Master System port, really good game, and yeah, fantastic. Right, moving on, we've then got, I bought Outrun 2006 Coast to Coast, because I originally had this for the PS2, but then sold it. Effectively, it's the same game as the PS2, as far as I can make out, just that you've got it on the handheld, and it's a fantastic game. I love playing it on the PSP, and it's great for taking away, etc. Fantastic game. And then obviously I bought back about a month or two ago. So around, I reckon, 15, 16 years ago, I decided to clear out a load of games like most collectors do. I was quite mad on cars at the time, and decided to sell some games off that I wasn't playing at the time, which was a silly thing to do. I do regret doing this, and one of the games was this. So I decided to buy it back, and it is a fantastic game. However, I would say that from the video footage I've seen, it probably looks better on the Xbox, and hence why the Xbox is commanding a bit more money now. In terms of, these are about 15-20 quid, whereas Xbox is probably closer from 70 to £100 really. But anyway, effectively the same game. Very, very good game. And definitely a must-have if you've got a PS2. Must-have on your PS2. So that's never going out of the collection again. I love playing that. And so the last game is this, Sega's Outrun 2. It is a fantastic game, and I play it on my Xbox 360. And yeah, it is brilliant. It is really, really good. It is really a modern-day reincarnation of that game there. And Sega, if you're watching, please can we have another one, maybe for the PS5 and Switch, where, you know, you've got that ingredients and essence and recipe for the Outrun games. It would be great. Honourable mentions, really, things like I was obsessed with Chase HQ, mainly because of that box art that it came with. I think it was called Special Investigations on something else like an Amstrad and Spectrum Sinclair, I think, wasn't it? But for the consoles, it was Chase HQ. And then there was a Chase HQ 2. I think Chase HQ was on the Super Nintendo, wasn't it? And I think it was on the Mega Drive, or was it on the Genesis? I can't remember. But the Outrun games, for me, they stand head and shoulders. There's something about it, whether it's just the combination of the music and the gameplay and the graphics. I don't know, but I've always been a loyal Outrun fan. And until recently, I didn't realise there was an Outrun 2 on the Xbox. And luckily for me, you know, I've got a copy of it as well. So yeah, so they're my Outrun games. It's a very short video because obviously there's not many Outrun games to talk about. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care, guys.
Coffee? Tea?
Sega!